won the game, they based it upon what your actual graduation rate was, and I think they may have considered one's GPA as well. But for sure, they did the graduation rate. I was astounded. I was absolutely astounded. I mean, floored beyond belief to see what the graduation rate was for some of the schools that are in the NCAA tournament. Most shocking of all of them, because I even looked up some of the football ones that, of course, we're not in this bracket. But once I saw how abysmal some of the graduation rates were for basketball, then I went into a panic because naturally I kind of feel like, maybe it's my own bias, but I kind of feel like, well, if it's bad in basketball, it must be really bad in football because, football is like, the worst of the worst is where the scoundrels live. And that's where the SEC runs wild. And that's where there's, they're holding kids back in second and third grade. They're feeding them extra ho-hos and steaks and stuff. And they're trying to develop a 200-pound fifth grader, So that's kind of how I view football, and that's as a football lover and a football player and a big dude. That's how I feel about football. So I just feel like, okay, if basketball is doing the wrong thing, football must be really doing something crazy. But I came to find out that some of the graduation rates were so poor in basketball, and one of the ones that I would like to highlight was the University of Connecticut. Now, the University of Connecticut, that literally floored me. Number one, it's right up the street here from where we're at. And the University of Connecticut has had a program that has done well over the past couple of decades, primarily under Jim Calhoun, and now their current coach, who was personally tapped by Calhoun to be the next guy and to replace him. And here at Bracket Time, I'm like a lot of guys. I watch a lot of ESPN. I'm like an ESPN junkie. I mean, I flip back and forth with a couple of different sports shows. But I'm the guy who can sit in front of like ESPN and just watch the thing over and over again. Like people watch CNN, or I could do CNN also. But you just watch it over and over again, and they're playing the same thing every 30 minutes, every 60 minutes. Doesn't change much, and you just keep on watching. You're almost waiting to see a new angle or something. So I'm kind of that guy when it comes to ESPN. So I'm watching fairly religiously, but I'm disturbed to see Jim Calhoun come out on ESPN, and I believe he's employed by ESPN. But, when he's introduced, as a lot of guys are on what's his name? On ESPN, a lot of them, when they are introduced, they come out and the announcers of whatever show introduce them as the great. So Jim Calhoun is the great Jim Calhoun is with us. So you hear that on Mike and Mike, or you hear that about, Bill Walton or this one or that one. Whoever comes out, they introduce these guys as the great. And I'm not saying that Jim Calhoun did not have, obviously, a great career as a coach. But somewhere along the way, there has to be some onus, some responsibility. If we're going to call the kids who play these sports, if we're going to call them student athletes, and we are going to say that the benefit of them going to the institution and the reason why in this perverse system, and this is a perverted system, the NCAA is filled with perversion. So if we're going to take this perverted institution, the NCAA, that literally prostitutes kids, basically, and doesn't pay them any money whatsoever and makes $1 billion off of them, but they're going to say, well, the kids get a free education. Well, then, damn it, make sure the kids get the education. I go to UCONN because the great Jim Calhoun For the majority of his career, which was like a 20 to 30 year career at UConn, he had a graduation rate of less than 30%. Less than 30%. So when we're sitting here applauding him as the great Jim Calhoun, and we're saying that UConn, like, it does all these wonderful things in the basketball tournament and in bracketology, and kids are getting a chance at education, and it's a great opportunity for them to get an education. Well, you know what? Then let's say the whole thing, folks. Let's finish the sentence and let's say, actually, at UConn, they are not educating these kids. And it is a crime, and it is an injustice to the kids. And we should all feel bad when we sit here and see UConn winning national championships. They're finishing everybody's bracket. Everybody's making, Calhoun himself was the highest paid person in the state of Connecticut for like forever. He was making like $3 million a year as the head basketball coach at UConn. Now, what he said, and he was partially right, what he said was, do you know how much money we make for this school? He's got a press conference. You can go to it on YouTube. Jim Calhoun had the audacity when he was challenged by some reporters a couple of years ago. He said, well, do you know how much money we make for this school? I don't want to hear about anything. We make in excess of $12 million of top line revenue for this school, and we pay for all the sports, so I don't want to hear about what I get paid, because whatever I get paid is justified because I'm bringing in $12 million at the top line, and that pays for all kinds of things that go on in this, in the school, the university, endowments, whatever it is, other athletic programs. We are the tail, and we wag the dog, and we're the ones who get it done. UConn men's basketball. So I don't want to hear from anybody. So from a business standpoint, he's actually right. He did make a lot of money for UConn. He did put UConn on the map, on the men's basketball map, while Gino was doing it in the women's game, obviously. And obviously they've been fantastic. But where Calhoun's argument holds no water, and where he ought to literally be arrested for criminal acts against minors, is that he brings these kids to school. He acts like he's giving them an education. The University of Connecticut acts like they're educating these kids, and they are not educating these kids worth a damn. And in the past few years, at the time when late in his career, he actually he finally got hit with a sanction by the NCAA at some point. But even beyond the sanction, and then he handed the program off to his protege. But at this point, over the past few years, their graduation rate has dipped to as low as single digits, down to like 7 or 8%. Now, apparently this past year, they got it back up to like 17 or 18%. But that is absolutely crazy. It is unconscionable that this man continues to walk around and walk the hallways of an institution like ESPN, and everybody sitting there applauding him, talking about the great Jim Calhoun, when this man should be under arrest for depriving kids of an education, when we're going to sit here and say that he's part of the NCAA, he's part of this institution which does so much to create benefits for kids to better themselves, and then we don't ensure that those kids actually do what we say they are supposed to be doing. And you know what I don't buy? I don't buy that everybody was on track for graduation, and then they just fell out, the last semester and just didn't finish up their last 1 or 2 credits. I don't think that everybody's doing that. You can't convince me that is what has happened here. So therefore, I'm left to conclude that they were never on track. Nobody ever cared. They were passed by, and they continued to play basketball every week and every month and every year like it was right. How do you end up with the new coach, Holly? But how do you end up with a graduation rate in the single digits? And why is nobody talking about that? Why is that not like the biggest story on Sports Center or on CBS Sports or anybody else doing a sports program tonight? Why are we talking about bracketology instead of talking about kids who are not graduating and how that is completely criminal? Now, I will say to his credit, now the women's game is a different game, but the UConn women, #1 team in the country, Gino apparently has like a 100% graduation rate. Now, maybe, maybe young gals and young women don't get as distracted as young men do. Maybe that's a given that they don't get as distracted. Maybe guys are stupid. Maybe we're less disciplined. I could go along with all that. I was a guy. I was stupid. I was undisciplined. Okay, I get it. I'm not even here to argue that point. But there's the realm of undiscipline. I mean, take a couple of summer school classes, get with a tutor, do what you got to do. Take an extra gut over spring break or over winter session, but finish up school. Finish up and get a degree. At least be on track to be remotely close to your degree. But to have guys who just fall out and are not even close to a degree, it's just completely unconscionable. And I want people to stop talking about the great Jim Calhoun. I want people to start talking about Jim Calhoun as a criminal. Jim Calhoun is a criminal. And we need to start to say that out loud. That it is criminal to have robbed young people of an education while you prostituted them and made $3 million a year for yourself on their backs. And you always held it out that you were getting them an education, and it turns out you did not get them an education. You are a fraud, and you are doing the wrong thing. And he's not alone. In fairness to Calhoun, he's not alone. If you start to dig into this report with time, it's a whole bunch of schools who are doing it. And I guess what I would say, just coming back to another point, but in the NCAA, when I look at some of the other stuff that's gone on recently, like at Louisville with the scandal or what have you, with this whole thing with the dorm and dancers or whatever else, you know what I see with Rick Pitino? In this same report, I think they said that Rick Pitino had either a 79 or 89% graduation rate. You know what? I'm more interested in that. What 20-year-old kids saw a stripper, whether or not they saw the stripper in a strip club or saw the stripper in their dorm or whatever, I really don't care about. Young men are going to see strippers, so we all need to stop clutching our pearls. That's going to happen. Let's just get over that. But the fact that Rick Pitino is actually graduating his kids at a respectable rate, at a 79 or 89% clip, we should applaud that. And we should focus on that instead of getting into his bedroom and his dormitory and what else is going on at the school at that level. Lastly, I just want to say that Coach K, I took a shot at you last week. I'm going to take one more shot this week. For all the atrocities of what you let this punk Grayson do on your own team this past year, now you took this punk and not only did you not punish him, you took the time to start to talk about someone else's player who took a shot late in the game at Oregon after you lost. You're correcting the player from Oregon. That wasn't the wrong thing. It was you're lying about it in the press conference afterwards, and then you try to take advantage of the fact that you were part of the institution that nobody would question you, but they would question the young man. That was wrong, Coach K. Coach K, who is your next class of world-class punks that you're going to recruit to replace Grayson? Because he's going to go pro this year, but there'll be some new punks, and that's the problem with Duke. It's always another class of punks, and you got a punk institution that justifies it, whether or not it's Jay Williams didn't completely do it today, but my man from the Heat completely had your back today on Levitard, and I'm through. I'm through with the whole Duke Punk program. But listen, this was Mike G, C-Suite Sports, csuitesports.net. I'm giving it to you hot, giving it to you live. Thank you as always to Nick and Chuck. I will see you next week on Monday, 5 o'clock. Thank you for riding with me. I'm out.
Westchester's last remaining local community station, 460 WBOX and WBIB HD2.
Come on.
Hey, good.
How are you?
Sure thing.